DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Against the Boards. Thanks to my producer Paul Russo for getting us up and running. I'm Chamberlain Bauder and we're here for another episode talking. Today will be one of the last weeks here before we get into a bit of a month of hockey talking about lacrosse in upstate and western New York. Now, before we get into anything, of course, today being September 11th and us being a heavily lacrosse show, there's no way that we can go on air today and not talk about the man with the red bandana, Welles Crowther. Everybody in the lacrosse world knows who Welles Crowther is, and for those that might not, Welles was a former Boston College lacrosse player who happened to be at the World Trade Center on September 11th in 2001. He was from New York State, and he went back countless times to help people escape from the stairwells in the towers during the attack on September 11th and lost his life while in the saving actions of that day. Sorry, it's a hard thing to kind of talk about, but of course, now Welles Crowther is the humanitarian award namesake for the Premier Lacrosse League. His mom still has a fund that is constantly being donated to and also promoted by every team at Boston College and literally every single team at Boston College, as well as most lacrosse teams around the country. You'll see from BC, every single team in their season has a red bandana game that they play. And one of the most beautiful jerseys, in my opinion, that college football has to their name is that red bandana jersey that's worn by BC. This weekend, we'll inevitably likely see Mrs. Crowther at the PLL Championship in New Jersey. I don't doubt for a second that 19 will be a focal point for whether it be halftime or pregame of that game. Of course, something that is very near and dear to the lacrosse world and is probably one of the biggest bridges for lacrosse into the mainstream is really the world of the man in the red bandana. And everyone in the lacrosse world and outside of the lacrosse world, I think, should know about that story. Unfortunately, we have to keep it on a somber note here, as last week on Friday, it was announced that at the campus of Marquette, there was a car accident with, I believe, 5 lacrosse players in the vehicle. Multiple were hospitalized and 2 lost their life. One of the ones that lost their life was a native of upstate New York and someone that I actually had the pleasure of watching play lacrosse just 3 weeks ago in the National Collegiate Box Series tournament. Noah Snyder was a former junior Bandit, a former junior Nighthawk. He played for the Haudenosaunee national team and played for the Buffaloes in the Upstate Collegiate Box Lacrosse League as recently as the second week of August this month, playing at the campus of RIT. It's never easy to see something like this happen, and it's even harder when you don't necessarily realize immediately that the person is that close or is someone that you saw or watched. It's just, it feels like complete devastation just getting added onto the lacrosse world with that one a little bit. That really, I was affected significantly more than I thought I would be. And it's just something that you don't think is going to happen to someone that has so much of their life left in front of them. But there's our somber moments for, I think, the saddest opening 4 minutes of a podcast I've ever recorded. Now we can kind of get into the rest of the world of lacrosse for this week, as I I mean, it just feels like completely that somber week at this point with everything that's been going on around our country. But some good news coming out of the PLL this week, and that is an announcement for the WLL. You might know from, I don't actually know how much I talk about women's lacrosse on this podcast. On my previous podcast, the Western New York Lacrosse podcast, women's college lacrosse was almost as big of a part as men's college lacrosse was on my show. So I could not be more excited to be able to tell everyone here that the WLL will play a full season in 2026. Full games throughout the summer, a playoff and a championship, and it will be over 11 weekends of 10v10. Now, non-lacrosse people, or non-women's lacrosse people that might understand men's lacrosse, let's talk about 10v10 women's lacrosse real quick. This is not your college women's lacrosse setup. College women's is ultimately 11v11. So there will be one less player on the field. So normally you have 4 defenders, 4 attackers, 3 midfielders, and a goalie. And of course, math in my head is hard. That's 12, not 10. Now you cut down. You go to essentially men's numbers. The field will likely be smaller too. That is the biggest difference in college between women's and men's, is the women's field is larger. And so with that, they put another defender and another attacker on the field. With this WLL league, we'll likely see them playing on the PLL fields. And with that, you have to go down to 10v10 because there's literally just not enough space to play with 4 attackmen and 4 defensemen. So with that said, the game is getting closer to each other. The women's and men's games are getting closer to each other with something like that happening. And it'll be intriguing to see if after next summer, we see potential for change coming into the college ranks for how the game gets played. I'm just really intrigued to see that. Also excited to see a player like Erin Quickendall out of Spencerport going to still be playing in her pro career now for I believe she'll be on the New York Charging. She should be. All across that women's league, there are going to be players, whether they're from Syracuse that played at Syracuse or played high school ball in the Section 5 or Section 4 areas. They are going to be all over this league, and I'm super excited to be able to get into that more next season, and it's not just the championship series that they're playing in with 6s. So super exciting for the world of women's lacrosse right there to see that coming down the pipeline. Now, coming up this Sunday, and don't worry, NLL fans, we will be getting into all of the Knighthawks draft picks after we talk about this upcoming Sunday and a little bit more. But first, September 14th, it will be the PLL Championship, and I am so sick of all of the storylines everybody else is putting out and manufacturing about this game. Let's just sum it up right here. This is not a game of the winningest coach without a championship in pro lacrosse. It is the game of the winningest coach in field lacrosse without a championship in Tim Sudan. Oh, and by the way, every time that he made it to a championship, it was as a Rochester Rattler. And I'm pretty sure most of the time that they lost, here's the best irony of the whole situation. I don't think you're ready for this one, Paul. They got beat by the Denver Outlaws in those championships. The Denver Outlaws now are not champions of the outdoor league because they were beat by the Denver Outlaws. I just find that super ironic. But I literally watched the game where I was just like sitting in a hole like, oh yeah, they just got to force a team that's not a hotbed to be the good one, which is what happened in the MLL. They said, let's make all of these teams not in hotbeds the best teams so that we can encourage people to watch them. And then, of course, Denver comes and beats Rochester, and you're just like, oh, cool, okay, sweet. But ultimately now we get the team that was one of New York's teams in the Rochester Rattlers. They moved to Dallas, and now then became the Chrome, then now the Denver Outlaws. will be playing against the team from New York who has yet to make a PLL championship. Now, here's the narrative part that really bugged me that is coming in with all of this. There are people in the world that are sitting here saying, oh, the Atlas, the Chokers, whatever you want to say about them. Like there's some narrative that exists about this team from years past. Trevor Baptiste is the only player on this team from 2019. Mike Pressler is not the coach that was here for the first 3 years of their existence. This is not, they lost in overtime of the playoffs last year. There is no storyline that the Atlas are some sort of chokers that can't do it in the big moments. Their goalie literally won back-to-back national championships and has played 3 games in his life that are bigger than any he will ever play in the PLL period. He won 2 national championships and he already won a gold medal for Worlds. He's not going to play in a PLL game that is more important than any of those 3, period. Like, done. Game, set, match. So, with that said, this whole narrative that, oh, they can't do it in the big moments, and when the sun is, or when the spotlight's shining the brightest, they just can't meet up to expectations. The hardest game they played this year, they lost in overtime after Connor Schellenberger literally scored the game-tying goal in the final minute. It was 18-17. If you call that shying away in the biggest moments, then you just don't watch enough sports. Like, it just absolutely is a despicable notion to think that storylines like that should exist in a league that has existed for 6 years. Period. This league has not existed long enough to have any sort of identity that is a choker. It just hasn't. The only identity that you could have formed out of the PLL in times of the last 6 years is that the Chaos are full of Canadians and they suck in the first month of the season because none of their team was there, and then the whole squad gets there and they're the best team in the league because they just won the indoor title. That's the only storyline of a team that you actually can formulate out of the PLL, and now that's completely done because none of them want to play in the PLL anymore. If you've noticed, I'm also just riding right on the band of I've tried to like tiptoe around this like line of not being, too overly opinionated and objective of the league, wanting to make sure that I can get a credential, and then they don't give you one anyways. So ultimately you just say what you feel. It's just like play the game. You're going to have 4 Tuerton winners on one team. On the other team, you've got one of the best college attack duos ever in Xander Dixon and Connor Schellenberger. And you have lacrosse Jesus, period, Jeff T. Play the game. Let's see how it goes. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the thing I'm maybe most excited for about this matchup, as I've talked about this Denver Outlaws team and where my frustrations lie with how they play plenty of times, Danny Logan is not going to let the short stick matchup be how Denver dictates this game at all. Danny Logan is probably going to be a better matchup defensively than half of the polls that the Atlas have. I'm really, really intrigued to see what Justin Anderson and Dalton Young actually end up doing against this Atlas squad. Those are the 2 midfielders that usually get the short stick matchups for Denver. I feel like while watching this season, they have won their games. Denver has won their games by brute force of their players. It has not been the tactics. It has not been, here's the matchup we need to constantly pursue and try to beat. It has literally just been, nope, we're going to touch the ball more than you are, and we can score at a more efficient clip than you can with bad shots and such. So I'm really intrigued to see when one team that is definitely going to be getting coached the entire time in what kind of plays they want to design and trying to play the bigger game within the game. Hey, we're going to draw you inside so we can take the outside shots or vice versa. You're going to get the Atlas going in and trying to be methodical against a Denver team that's just going to try to take as many punches as they can throw. And when you get a game like that, you've got 2 goalies in Logan McNaney and Liam Entenmann who are literally I mean, I think the only two goalies in the world that can have hold a snuff to them are Blaze Reardon and Brett Dobson. Colin Kerst is fantastic. I don't think he's as good as either of them. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm at the point now, just with Blaze's age, I love Blaze. Don't get me wrong. Blaze Reardon is the best goalie that lacrosse has ever seen. Period. Right now, if I'm a GM of a PLL team, I'm taking Logan McNaney or Liam Entenmann over him every single day just because of age and the production that they already offer. This game might cement... actually, the loser could still be the one that you sit here after the game and be like, well, that's the better goalie. That is going to be a completely separate game inside of this, I think. Inside of this championship is which of those goalies is the future of the league, or are they truly dual faces of the goalie position for the next 10 years, which they easily could be. They easily could be that. But while we're on that specialist topic, Trevor Baptiste and Luke Weirman is going to be a dogfight at the face-off dot, and I truly think that I don't necessarily think that the winner of that will dictate who wins the game, but I do think that if Denver comes out on top in the face-off battle, that they can win because of it more so than the Atlas would be able to. I just think that, I think Denver's offense succeeding in this game will depend on how many touches they can get. And if they significantly outweigh the touches of the Atlas, then they're going to win just because they have the chances to create more. But I think if those chances are even between both offenses, I think the Atlas come out with this game. It'll really depend on how much they take away from a guy like Connor Schellenberger and Jeff Teat on the Atlas side of things, and then Pat Cavanaugh and Brennan O'Neill on the other side of things as the controllers of that squad. We'll just have to wait and see for Sunday with that one from Harrison, New Jersey. So that sums up our field lacrosse conversations. And now, of course, we will get into the 6 draft picks by the Rochester Knighthawks on Saturday last week. Now, I'm just going to put this out there. I enjoyed the first round of the draft and the way that it was put out to us on NLL Plus. I did not love that we don't get any sort of commentary with any of the other picks in the draft. Now, with that said, I know how the NLL draft goes. When you get to round 5, there is no reason that you should have prep ready for some of the players that get drafted. I mean, the Knighthawks' 5th round pick literally was not on the list of players that were going in for the draft. It was just a guy that was eligible that they wanted to make sure they got in a face-off specialist in OJ Morris. So I get why they didn't, but it was a pain in the butt for me to follow. It was also a pain in the butt to try to figure out. I mean, I literally had Instagram with every single team in my recent search bar because I had to check every hour to see if a UCBLL guy got drafted by one of those teams. It was a process, to say the least. But ultimately, we will take a run through the quick bios of the players that were drafted by the Knighthawks, and we will start with, of course, their 2nd round pick in Adam Thistlethwaite. Now, as we get to Adam first, let's address some of the elephants in the room and why I maybe should have made this pick well before the draft happened. Adam Thistlethwaite is a member of the Peterborough Lakers in the MSL. He was their draft pick during the MSL draft earlier in the year of 2025. He's a lefty defenseman out of Albany. He plays short stick D-Medi for Albany. This had Knighthawks written all over it. This screamed Knighthawks. First of all, for those that don't know, the Peterborough Lakers are coached by Mike Hazen in the MSL. That is the team that Mitch Ogilvie plays on, Matt Gilray plays on. 2 years ago, the list used to be a lot more conducive to the Knighthawks, and then a lot of changes happened with certain players going over to the Bandits and else not. So it's changed a bit, but ultimately the Peterborough Lakers are very much the Knighthawks of Major Series Lacrosse. That was how we figured out that Austin Hazen was going to become a Knighthawks draft pick the same year as Thomas McConvey, because he had been drafted in the MSL the year before by the Peterborough Lakers. We knew that they were going to take him in that first round, and they did. Thistlethwaite is a 6'2" lefty out of Cobourg, Ontario. Ultimately, the thing with Thistlethwaite is it's just what we had said coming into this draft last week. The one need that the Knighthawks can always go to is lefty defensemen. You can literally never have enough lefty defensemen, and over the last 3 or 4 years, they have almost always at least taken a shot on one. Ben McDonnell is one of the first ones that comes to mind, was their first round pick, I believe 2 years ago now. He didn't end up staying with the squad. He went to Albany, but ultimately that's the thing. They take their shots on their big lefty defensemen. And so their first shot here is one that they have a little bit of a safety valve on because they've been seeing him play this summer. And so Adam Thistlethwaite joins the squad at pick 24. The other thing with Thistlethwaite there, ultimately that's that pick that they got from Colorado in the Zed Williams trade. Maybe they didn't know if they were going to get Thistlethwaite at 28, and they wanted to ensure that they were going to get that, and that calculated in. Ultimately, though, just good quick movement from Dan Carey to ensure that they'd be able to get who they wanted in that second round with their pick. So at 24, they get Adam Thistlethwaite. In round 3 at pick 43, they added on to that with Seth Martineau out of Windsor, Ontario, another lefty defenseman. Seth's a little bit bigger, though. 6'6", 215 pounds. And he's 2 years younger than Adam Thistlethwaite, also, as we look at it. Just played for the Toronto Beaches in Junior A this last year. As a defenseman, having a massive body like that is a major opportunity for the Knighthawks, and it just kind of stacks into that Thistlethwaite conversation, right? The difference here is Thistlethwaite played for the Nighthawk or for the Peterborough Lakers over the summer. Seth Martineau's 6'6". You just take the shots when you get them. In the fourth round, it was a bit of a change, going to a righty forward, but still had Knighthawks written all over him. Seneca Nation native, Albany alum Amos Whitcomb, the forward, drafted in the fourth round. His notable year to take a look at is his junior A year in 2023 with the Orangeville Northmen. He put up 49 points in 16 games. He played one game for the Rapids in the UCBLL in the NCBS tournament. Had one goal in that, and also played 3 games in the MSL this summer with the Brampton Excelsiors, scored 2 goals and 2 assists. The rest of his year he played in the Can-Am and Senior B. But ultimately, Seneca Nation guy, young guy that will likely be able to learn from a guy like Zed Williams very easily. 6 foot 220. Just crisp add to the group ultimately to keep numbers stocked up on that offensive end. And as you bring in guys that are aging a little bit more, always good to have young bucks that can kind of learn from them there. In the fifth round, we already talked about it ever so slightly. OJ Morris, and he is a face-off specialist out of Delaware. So ultimately, it is something that I'm going to be intrigued to see next year, is with the way that Sisselberger played over this summer and then had his injury, is he really going to be the face-off specialist for the Knighthawks next year? I don't know. I also don't know if there's ever any point where Joe Post is going to come back. That's what I would want in an ideal scenario. I think Joe Post would be the best case scenario for the Knighthawks at the face-off dot. But ultimately, not sure if he's going to be one coming back. Jumped over a second, third round pick out of Hamilton, Ontario, and Mount St. Mary's. Mitch Dunham plays for the Archers in the PLL. Another 6'6" lefty defenseman. Just adding on to the size in the third round for the Knighthawks. And then the last pick by the Hawks, another righty forward in the sixth round, Clifford Gaston, the RIT product, the played for the Hawkeyes in the NCBS tournament this year, usually played for the Armory in the Upstate Collegiate Box Lacrosse League. Yeah. In last year, when I was working for the Knighthawks over the summer covering the UCBLL, he, in only 6 games, had 20 goals and 7 assists. He's gross. The stick is an extension of his body. Ryan Lee is definitely the comp that I would make, but more of a shooting first mentality than Ryan Lee has. Just the way he moves is very Ryan Lee-esque. Played, really though, the thing that held him back is all of his summer lacrosse over the last 2 years has been in the States, which is weird for a guy who is from Welland, Ontario, but ultimately playing at RIT, stays around, and played in the summers in Rochester. He's someone that I'm currently trying to get onto the show for next week so that we can talk a little bit about how he found out about the news and everything like that. He's was a first-year All-American in 24, third-team All-American in 23, led RIT in points from attack last season. Just made sense as a pickup, but interesting to me to see him go here instead of a lefty like Zach Terry when they have significantly more righties on the squad right now. Last thing before we end the show here today, saw a beautiful tweet from Pat Gregoire 2 days ago. And I will just say right now, no, it's not a bad take, Pat. Coming out and asking, is it a bad take? It might be a bad take, but we need more organ players at box lacrosse games. Yes, we do. I think every NLL stadium that has an organ should have an organ player at it, period. And I think the NLL could make for some very interesting tunes on said organs. I just think that would be so cool. I love the idea of that. That's going to wrap it up for us this week on Against the Boards. A bit of a short one, a bit of a somber one to start. Hopefully next week coming at you with an interview. Of course, we'll have the wrap-up from the PLL Championship next week as well, and we'll take a slight step into hockey as we truly get around that corner and back into the season. But that's going to do it for us this week. I've been Chamberlain Bauder. Thanks to my producer, Paul Russo. You're listening to Against the Boards.